Hi, everyone. I have the awkward delay before I hit the record button on our podcasting platform. I'm Ryan O'Hara. Well, this is Tick Me Off Your List. And I'm really excited. I am up in my attic in a 100-degree room right now, braving the elements. I cannot have an air conditioning on because if I do, you will hear a hum and you will not listen to this podcast. That's the production quality that I'm dedicated to give you. And I got someone even more dedicated than me to give me their precious time to come on here and talk to us today. Everyone say hi to Tania Doub. Dub, Dub.
Daub. Just
Dab,
don't ask my husband's
Dab.
grandmother.
Um,
Daub.
but real quick, for people that don't know, I do want to give people a background on you before you kind of say hi to everyone. They heard your voice for a sec, correct me, but like you basically have worked at like every big company ever and did something in a sales role or a leadership role. Do you want to tell people a little bit about what you're doing right now?
Yeah. So thanks for that. I'm so pumped to be here and have this time with you. And I promise I'm not going to rub it in that I'm actually in my basement and it's freezing cold down here right now. I'm so sorry, but I'm sending you good vibes. I actually have spent the last couple decades of my career being an individual contributor. And you're right, Ryan. I have worked for every kind of software company you can imagine. So everything from small Bay Area startups turned unicorn companies,
Yep.
all the way up to companies like eBay and Salesforce. So I have put in the time and I have gotten really personal with quotas and aggressive sales targets. And I'm super excited to say in the last couple months, I actually have left all of that to launch my own company. So yeah, it's been really exciting, but a lot of selling background here. So hopefully we'll provide some value there in terms of the sales motion for people too.
I think that it's funny. I'm just looking at every account that you have is like what used to be target accounts for us at Lead IQ. Like I'm just like, up.
Yep.
We tried to get in there. We tried to get in there. We
Yep.
tried to get in there. So one of the big things that I want to talk about today with you, and we were talking about this, we bumped into each other at Salesforce World Tour 2 weeks ago, is transitioning and doing transition with your go-to-market team. And I know a lot of people are like, wait, what the hell does that mean? Let's put it this way. All of us have a moment in business where like we want to change something. We want to do something different. We want to have an impact. We want to, you know what I kind of think about? I always think about, did you watch The West Wing when it was on in the 90s?
Oh, I did. I did.
I love The West Wing. So I liked it when Sorkin wrote for it. When he left after season 4, it kind of went downhill a little bit. But listen, if John Wells is listening, I'm not insulting you. Just Sorkin hit my spots for me. Um, at the end of season 1 of The West Wing, they basically spend the whole first season of I'm not spoiling anything for people that listen, but they spend the whole first season of the show like just getting their ass kicked by the media and by other politicians and getting played and all this stuff. And at the end of the season, they get the whole staff into the room with the president, and the president basically is like, you know what? We ran to do our thing, and what we're doing is we're letting them do our thing instead. And it kind of the whole season ends with like a rah rah, like, oh, they're gonna finally like let Jeb Bartlett be Jeb Bartlett, and
Yeah.
that transition is nice on TV when you get a rally and you all get like behind something you want to do together. It's way harder to actually do. So walk me through this. If let's say I want to go through a major change at my company, I can give you some hypothetical examples if you want, Tanya, if it's easier. But um, what are some basic ways to actually figure out what if you need to do a change in the first place?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think this is such an important question because I think transitions are so big and I think they're underrated, right? Because I think we all want to move so fast and there's so much that we want to do that it's really hard to think mindfully about where you want to go and bring that intentionality to things. So I think transitions for the sake of transitions are sometimes what happens. But the reality is that there's a lot of things that we can do to really like figure out, is it a transition that I want, that I need because I see that there's a reason for me to move in this direction or move my team in this direction? Or is it just because I'm doing what everybody else thinks I should be doing and I'm just like a me too and I'm following suit, right? And I think that there's a big difference there because there are some things that we do, we don't even know why we do them. We just do them because everybody else is doing them. But in the Happiness Project, there's a survey that they did with respondents from Harvard University, right? And everybody just tracks really closely to what the average is of what everybody else is doing. And we ignore the outliers, anybody who scored too low or too high. And the reason we ignore them is because there's not enough data on that person. But really, if we doubled down on the outlier, wouldn't
Yeah.
that be where the magic is, right? So
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah. I'm in. I'm feeling
that we
that.
do have to take a moment and transition, because when we do things with intentionality, we create more purpose and we can go big.
So if I wanted to, how do you find out your intention? Do you write it down? Do you publicly declare it? Like, what's the first step? Let's do it on the individual level first, because I think that that's kind of an area that you and I were talking about a couple weeks ago that I was interested in. Like, I'm an individual, and I'm like, I want to stop mailing it in, or like
Yeah,
that could be an example, right? Like, or I want to I want to I want to switch from being a liability to my coworkers to being an asset and helping them out. Like, let's say maybe I'm making some generic ones that are too vague, but I don't know.
it's
Like,
actually not vague. It's so
okay,
perfect because you want to start and stop a behavior, right?
yeah,
So I think about the transition. We talked when we met, we started the conversation about big transitions. So I was moving from, working for a company, being an IC, transitioning into my own business. I can talk about what that looks like and what that transition intentionally looks like. But
yeah,
let's talk about behaviors like what you just mentioned, which is like, I want to start this behavior because I need to put a stop to this type of habit or behavior. And I think the first step, Ryan, in that is acknowledging the behavior, which is so hard, right? Because sometimes what we do is we just keep doing the thing,
yeah,
even though we know we have a bad habit. So, for example, like I will give you, personal examples to me, which are not necessarily business related,
yeah,
but the Amazon packages keep showing up at my back door. Excuse me. But then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Why is my credit card bill so high? Never mind. I'll ignore it. I won't look at it. Right. And so this like acknowledging being the first step of there is a problem,
yeah,
and I need to actually look at that bill and acknowledge that, oh, the connection is between the purchase that I make and the box that shows up at my door and the anxiety I feel about the bill being so high is all related. It's one problem. And I don't think we do that enough because it's easy just to say, oh, it's tomorrow's problem.
I'm kind of actually, I'll give you a really good example of this for me. One of the problems that I keep catching myself doing is I keep doing the work instead of letting other people do the work. Like, I have Jeremy doing stuff in sales, Jeremy Levy on our
Mhm.
team. I have Mazda doing stuff in marketing. And like, my whole thing is I try to teach first if I know something that I can teach. But if I don't, um, I end up like, hey, Mazda, let's do this video. Oh, I don't know how to edit that. Oh, okay. I'll cut it. And now I'm doing 4 hours of that instead of getting a new pitch deck done. Or
Right.
like that's like stuff that comes up every day. And like, I keep catching myself being like, crap, I just spent 2.5 hours on this thing that I really like, that he was going to do and wanted to do. And I just took it over kind of, which is bad, you know?
I know, but you just did the first step. You just acknowledged it. Okay.
Okay.
So that this is real
I
time.
get a
We're
gold
problem solving.
star.
You do get a gold star because we just acknowledged that that is an issue because you probably have so much more productivity doing other things that will move the needle with your business.
Yeah.
So then, right, we talked about, okay, so what does that look like? Do I write it down? Do I brainstorm? Do I think about how to change that behavior? And I think that's the point where you do something exactly like that, where you say, okay, what could be the worst possible thing that could happen if I just let him edit this video and he spends a little bit of extra time Googling, finding resources, figuring it out. Option one,
Yep.
right? Option two, what about if I spend this week a few extra hours helping him so that it's really eating up my day today, but it will pay dividends for me next week and the following week and the week after, right? So
Yeah.
then you start to craft solutions for how to think about addressing the issue. And then you pick a lane and you go.
All right. So you acknowledge you have a thing you need to change. I'm trying not to use the word problem because everyone always says that, but you
Yes,
acknowledge
yes.
that you need to change something. What happens next?
You create the options for the thing that you want to do. And then once you create those options, you come up with an accountability and an action plan. So I'll give you an example. I had a coaching client yesterday who we were working through how to create accountability because there were three very specific areas in her business that she needed to affect. One was pipeline, one
Yeah.
was internal conversations and relationships, and one was a better understanding of the product suite that she was selling. And so she put together this really impressive plan, right? Presented it back to leadership and got a gold star for acknowledging the problem. And then she was just going to keep doing the thing that she always does, which is chase the deal, run the demo, run the process, and just keep going. And
Yeah.
so the really important realignment that we did was, okay, wait, now you have this plan. You've acknowledged the problem. You've figured out how to solve that problem. Now let's go ahead and say, okay, how do we create the baby steps over the course of the next 2 to 3 to 4 weeks
Yeah.
to be able to take action on that big thing?
By the way, you're totally right too. We all get in the habit of just doing bad things over and over again, even if they're not
Mhm.
producing results. And then you're like, well, I just know this, so I'm going to keep going back to it. And everybody does this.
Yeah.
That's totally true. All right. So you make baby steps to get there. Is the idea that you can, in this framework, you can make it a habit to change? Is that kind of part of this too? Or like, what's it take to make it a habit?
Yeah. So the habit is actually, there's a lot of tricks that you can do to make it a habit, which is just this idea of habit building and habit stacking, right? Where you figure out what is the behavior that I want to change. And then you don't go into this spiral of like, I need to stop doing this, but you just add the positive behavior. Add a positive behavior, one behavior at a time until it becomes something that you can do. And I think the big key that we all don't really realize or we don't want to realize is that we think we're more productive when we're focusing on all the things and trying to dissect how to solve every problem.
Yeah.
When really, if we pick one and kick the ball 10 times, we get so much further with baby steps and that consistency. And then we create really, really big results for ourselves versus we think it's like this big, boy, I'm going to use the analogy boiling the ocean or right. Like we think it's this big thing that we have to do. And it's not. At the end of the day, it's like take 10 minutes to refine this habit and do it again tomorrow. And then wake up the next day and do it again the next day. And that's it.
It's funny. It's something that philosophically sticks with me. I always talked about this at Lead IQ. I was like, we need, and we're doing it here too at Pitchfire, but like, I used to say, like, we need little wins every day. Because if you can have one or two little wins every day, that multiplies into 300 or 400 wins a year. And if you have 300 or 400 wins a year, you're going to be doing a lot better and growing a lot faster than if you have one or two really big things that happen. It's the same thing with product releases too. Like when we do product stuff, I'm like, let's chip away and put features out quickly and little things instead of doing these big releases. Because when you do the big releases, if you whiff and miss, it's like you just put all your eggs in one basket.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with this. So like you set up little baby steps. How do you know what to do? What if you're doing a change and you don't know how to do it?
Yeah. So if you don't know how to do it, well, the thing is, you have to figure out what you want to do first, right? Once you figure out what you want to do, then you actually start to figure out, okay, what is the thing that I'm procrastinating and why am I procrastinating it? I think you're getting a sense there's a lot of reflection in this process, right? Because you do have to stop and think about what is the thing that will move the needle for me? And let's take your example where you said, I actually need to use my time more wisely and I don't
Yeah.
want to continue to do the editing, right? Because it
Yep.
takes 4 to 6 hours that I could be doing something else with. And so if you were mindful about that every Monday when you sat at your desk and you said, okay, these are the things that I absolutely have to do. And the editing just keeps showing up. And you realize, why does it keep showing up every week as something that is like a pain point for me or a blocker for the things that I want to do?
Yeah.
Then that's a really good trigger for you to say, okay, let's dissect this. Why am I having a problem with this activity? And then you start to say, okay, maybe it's because I am controlling. Maybe I think I do it better than everybody else. Maybe I think,
Reflection.
I don't know. I mean, that honest
No, it's probably what
reflection.
it is. That is probably what it is. No, honestly, I'm not kidding. That's totally what it is. That's really funny. I wish I had picked a different example because then I could like, this is my podcast's purpose is to con you into giving me free
Yeah.
consulting. But this is a good hypothetical. So like it's kind of like shout out to my friend Dan O'Brien, who was the best man at my wedding. Dan told me when I got married, we did like a whole like marital advice thing. And he's like, yeah, if you ever get in a fight with your wife, it's usually about a bigger problem. And whatever the
Ooh,
little thing is a symptom of a bigger problem. And that bigger problem is the thing that you need to change. And it's kind of stemming off what you're saying here. Like,
yeah.
hey, you need to stop being a controlling asshole, dude.
I mean, I didn't go that far.
No.
You added some adjectives there,
Direct
but
quote. Direct quote. I'm gonna. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But I just.
you're right,
Oh,
though. It's a
yeah.
symptom
Yeah.
of a bigger problem, right? Like,
Yeah.
I always know, and it's a really funny way to reflect back on my career, but I always knew that I was having some kind of bigger challenge with the role that I was in or a
Yeah.
situation that I was in. If I was picking a fight with my husband about the throw pillows or the amount of laundry, right? Like
Yeah.
if I was saying to him, like, I just can't handle the velocity of laundry, or why is this here versus that, it's definitely symptomatic of a bigger issue that was, something that I was struggling with in that moment. Right. And so I think that there's that cause and effect there for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's them. So you got to find that bigger problem. What are some tips to find that? Is that a thing? Is that too vague? Like, I know it's different for everything. Like, how do you find it? You're like, hey, am I doing this pattern in other areas too? Actually, you know what? It does relate back to what I said, because I was like, yeah, I use the editing thing as an example of a bigger problem
Mm-hmm.
where like I get mixed up rolling my sleeves up and doing work on stuff that I should let other people do. And it does
Yeah.
stem back to the control. But like, you look for that pattern in other areas besides the one thing you're trying to fix, right?
You do. And you know what? The fix is, I think that truly it's so my company is called Mindful Quadrant. It's because I approach everything mindfully. Now, does that mean I spend hours and hours and hours every week thinking about all the pros and cons and all the feelings that I have? No, because nobody has that kind of time. But
Yeah.
I do think that there are prompts that you should engage in every single week to help you figure out where you're having some issues, right? And I think you need to tune into your body and recognize that there are some things that create this level of anxiety or this conversation that you have with the pit of your stomach where you're like, just doesn't feel right. And so the way to do that is really to think about taking a healthy check on where you are with yourself as it relates to your company and your job on a regular basis. So, am I aligned with the core values of the company that I'm working for? Do I feel personally, emotionally invested and connected to what I'm doing? And does that bring me peace, or does that bring me anxiety? Am I being realistic about my pipeline and the activity that I need from a revenue generating perspective? Is it real, or is it something I'm making up in my mind? Is it just because I'm trying to make up for taking shortcuts, right? And not putting in the work. So just this healthy reflection that you can take on all the quadrants of your life that matter is so important, because then you can get a feel for, oh, I'm actually not being real with myself in this one particular area.
You might even actually find, if you're doing the reflection part too, you might even find you might find like an overarching problem that's bigger. Like,
Yeah.
uh, people here are going to watch this podcast like, man, Ryan's just getting free psychology here. But like, all right, think of it from this perspective. Maybe my element of wanting to roll my sleeves up and get involved and being in control is tied to anxiety, right? Like, and maybe like, I don't know, are you trying to get me to that level? Is that where you're taking me here? Like, but like it,
Well,
right?
I'm
It
getting
could
you
be.
to the level of acknowledging, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the level of acknowledging, like maybe there is some sort of undertone to, like, you care about your business, you care about where you're going with it, you care about perfection and delivering a quality product. And if I don't touch everything personally, then it doesn't have the look and the feel and the thing that I need to be able to create success for myself, right? And so it's a bigger way of analyzing where you are. And I think it's just healthy to think about, because it's so important. Like, where is this fear coming from?
Yeah, honestly, if you think about it too, it's like you tie back to the origin of the motivation behind the problem also. All right, so you
Mhm.
make little steps, you find your problem, you acknowledge it, You reflect on some things that you might need to do to help you find those little steps that you need to take to get there, or little wins, I
Mhm.
guess. Um, what's next?
You think big, truly. You think big. So what's next is you start obviously tackling the little things, right? Because you want to make consistent changes every day. And I think the biggest misconception is people think it has to be a huge change on a daily basis. It doesn't. It just needs consistent action. But when I say think big, what I'm saying now is you actually give yourself permission to say, if I could have anything, if this could be designed in any way, if I had no limitations, what would my world look like? What would this mean for me? What would my business do? What would I look like every day? What car would I be driving? Where would I be living? How would I be handling myself? How would I be interacting and engaging with other people? Right. So once you start putting yourself in a mindset of where you actually want to play, then it starts to create this whole new persona around who you are. And now all of the actions that you take build up to this bigger mission and vision that you're trying to create for yourself.
Yeah. That's great. So it's I mean, you gotta obviously have some ambition in whatever you're trying to do here too. I think if you're doing a minor thing, it might not work to do this, right? It's got to be something that's like a bigger change that you want to try and do. And
You know, Brian, I'll tell you, I've used this strategy for my sales quota for as long as I can remember, right? Because I can tell you from a seller perspective,
yeah,
what ends up happening a lot of times is you start a job or you start a new fiscal year and you have this really big aggressive target that you're given. And sometimes you feel really ambitious to tackle it. And sometimes you have a lot of things going on in your life that don't really allow you to 100% be in it in that moment. And that's a real thing that people don't talk about a lot. But I think that there are different levels of motivation because there are different sets of circumstances that either make it easy or relatively easy or extremely hard for you to hit that number and do that thing, right? Like as sellers, we're not really always set up for success.
yep.
So, really, what drives us is our own personal motivation. So, what I've done in this process over the course of my career as an IC is really go through all the steps we just talked about, which is identify why I'm stuck, where I'm stuck, what's possibly getting in my way, what's making me angry, why am I fluffing the pillows, right? Like, what are some of the quick check ins I can make with myself to understand what's working and what's not working? And then at the end of that, saying, okay, like, how does that relate to my number, my quota? And so then I end up saying, okay, well, this feels like an impossibility. So how do I pick a really big, high profile logo or an account or somebody that I can go after that I can now apply these little baby rules to every day to make big progress. And I'll tell you, I've been able, like I've had a drought in my pipeline where I always admire you because I think you're so good at just rattling cages and getting conversations. Like that wasn't always my strength. But I was having a drought in my pipeline and I thought, gosh, I'm really going to have to show something because I'm getting tired of the same update every week to my manager. And then one day I just made a mental shift in my brain where I said, I'm actually going to target the president of a multi-billion-dollar global beauty brand, and you are going to be mine. And I'll tell you, within 48 hours, I had a meeting booked with the president of this company, and all of a sudden, an action plan to start creating a plan to go through and do discovery with them. So it's a slight shift in mindset, but it's so powerful what you can do when you start making deliberate action about your goals.
And for the record, people listening, she is not talking about Pitchfire, which I know is a high-end, well-known beauty brand. If you follow my startup, you know that that's we're trying to create beauty in the world of prospecting. Ooh, I like that. I just stole that.
I
You
like
help me
that.
with that. That's collab. It's like one of those like '90s rap songs with like parentheses featuring. That's like what it just became. Yeah, that's great advice. So you do you do anything with third party? Like, do you tell another person so that you're accountable? How do you become accountable with this stuff? Because like you can be like, wrote this down. I said I'm going to do it. I'm listening to this podcast. We're going to do like. And by the way, if you're listening to this, the way we'd spin it for like go to market would be like, maybe you're like, hey, our email programs suck. We've been mailing in our webinar alerts and emails and stuff. We just email people to email people, and we're doing what everybody else does, and we want to change it. That's an example of something that like if I'm as a subscriber that gets a ton of emails from people, that's something most of you should probably do, by the way. But How do you get accountability like with this stuff?
Yeah. So I actually, a couple of different ways. I'm very big about third party. I do that a lot because I think for the big things, it's important. So when I set out to write my books a couple of years ago, I actually announced to some pretty well respected mentors and people in my community and my network that
Yeah.
I was writing a book. And a lot of it was, I actually have no idea how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do this. And so putting it out there and making yourself accountable, I think is part of it,
Yeah.
because I do believe that the universe has a way of aligning resources and people and opportunities to you based on how open you make yourself. Because I kid you not, the day after I announced that, I walked into my CrossFit gym where I work out and I announced it to another friend of mine. Oh, I'm writing a book. And he turned around and he said, oh, well, I actually have in my network a writing coach who happens to live in my neighborhood that I'm happy to connect you with.
Whoa.
And would you like? And I was like, oh gosh, that would be amazing. And we start the journey, right? And when it got really hard, Ryan, like a couple of years into the journey, I just remember thinking to myself, well, I told so many people now, I have to just do it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there is this level of third party accountability that I think is so powerful. I think that's why coaches and mentors and accountability checks are so important. That's what I do for my clients when I work with them one on one. And then from a tooling standpoint, like I'm sort of nerdy like this, but because I was an IC for so long, I never saw a tool that helped sellers stay accountable to what they need to do. And so I actually went ahead and designed a 90-day zero to quota notebook. And so the way that I actually approach my quarter is at the beginning of the quarter, I'll say, what are my goals? What am I trying to do? What are my target accounts? And every single week, Ryan, it asks me prompts. What am I trying to do this week? And at the end of every Friday, it's the reflection of what did I do? What did I not do? Where did I win and where did I lose so that I can keep myself accountable?
Actually, it kind of reminds me, I believe you have something that our podcast listeners can use. Wow, what a plug. What an organic voice I just did. You want to tell people what you're giving away?
Yeah. So actually, this is great because it's about a accountability tool. You know, when I used to leave sales kickoffs, I always thought like, well, that was so high energy, and now I'm so lonely sitting in my office trying to figure out how to do the thing. So for everybody listening, what I'm doing today is if you go to my website, and I know we're putting the link in the
We should
details here.
spell it out orally for people because they're going to
Yeah.
be podcast. Most people listen audio, not video.
Perfect.
But yeah,
Let's do that. So TaniaDoub.com, TANIADOUB.com. If you sign up for my emails, what I'm doing is I'm giving away a assessment to every person who signs up for an email. And this assessment literally helps you figure out where you're stuck. So Ryan, we talked about like the accountability plan.
yep.
This gives you the okay, so I'm trying to get real with myself. I want to figure out where I'm stuck with my selling journey, and it gives you an assessment across your 4 Ps. So am I stuck in purpose? Am I stuck in people? Is there difficult relationships at work that I'm trying to navigate that I just keep avoiding? Am I stuck in pipeline or am I stuck in process? At the end of that, you will get a score for every single P so that you can start to create that action plan. And what I'm doing, Ryan, is I'm giving away out of everybody who signs up for this free assessment, I'm doing a drawing and I'm giving away 5 of my sales planners to anybody who signs up for this offer.
Cool. We'll put a link in the description of the podcast to make it easier for
Yeah.
people. But all right. So, question for you: you're starting a business. I actually think the accountability third party thing is really useful. I had that.
Yeah.
You know what we noticed too? Um, when I left Lead IQ, and I knew I was going to start a startup, I put in my farewell post that I was going to start a company because I knew that like I was going to get wooed. Like I had other people try and hire me to go work for them. Like if I don't put this online, I'm going to take another job and not do this.
Yeah. That's
like,
awesome.
like that. Well, that was part of it. I was like, I need to like commit out loud. I think committing out loud is good. I honestly think that if you're in a go-to-market role, listening to this, whether you work in sales, marketing, maybe you're a leader, maybe you're a founder or something, and you listen to this podcast, I would don't leave this episode. Write something down that you want to change. Be like, what's something I really hate? Or we'll be a little negative here, but let's say something I really hate about myself that I want to change. That like I can change. And it doesn't even have to be business stuff either. You know what I mean? Like you can do some stuff there. Your new business, are you going to coach people on this, or like what's this? Are we going to spill the beans yet? You haven't really launched completely yet, right? You're getting there.
I'm getting there. And to your point, I made a big public announcement. So my LinkedIn right now is very non-traditional, right? Like we talk about transitions and taking a minute to breathe. I think making a leap from being an individual contributor to launching a company is a big decision and it's a big leap. And so my LinkedIn right now literally says, please wait while we align head and heart around what is next. Because when I launch this company, it's going to be really mindful. And it's going to have a lot of intention around it. So yes, we're in the process of launching. The company is going to be advocating for sellers. That's what I stand for, because that is my background.
Yep.
So it's going to be a lot of helping sellers figure out where they might be stuck in their sales motion, helping them figure out their emotional connection to their quota so that they can really get personal and see themselves in the process. And the analogy that I love to make is I do believe that sales companies do a really nice job of rolling out selling frameworks for their teams, whether that's value selling or medpick or force management. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
The way that I see those things is those are the gym memberships, right? Those are the tools. And if you just don't want to work out and exercise and put in the work, that gym membership's not going to do anything for you. So Mindful Quadrant is about actually giving you the motivation to say, yes, I'm going to put my workout clothes on. I'm going to go do the thing. I have a bigger dream for myself. This is what it looks like. This is how I'm going to tackle my quota. And so we do a lot of one-on-one coaching and team coaching and workshops around exactly that, how to make the most of your gym membership.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great metaphor. I was smiling. You know what's dumb about podcasts is you can't see them like laughing and smiling because I'm just quietly like ha 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 ha. But like that's really funny. That's it. No, it's exactly what it is. People do stuff, but then you got to change the behavior for it, and
Yeah.
you got to. This is the framework to do it. Thank you for being on. We got to have you come back when you got some stuff rolling, and we can do some other stuff together. I want to learn more about. Maybe I'll work on my control thing. Maybe I'll be great. I don't know.
I'm going to check in with you in 60 days and I want to know how it's going and how many podcast episodes you have let others on your team.
You're just on. Yeah. You're just on at my doorstep with an aluminum bat. I'm like, what?
Yes. Did I sign up for this? Yeah.
Everyone go check out the giveaway. We'll put the link in the description.
Yeah.
On my end, I just want to let people know we've got a lot of people now on Pitchfire in the marketplace. If you feel like you're struggling to build pipeline, go send some pitches to people on there. I'm going to drop stats that are crazy right now. The average person that joins Pitchfire, when they send a pitch to somebody, right now they're yielding around a 60% response rate, and 52% of those responses are turning into meetings. So you do the math out, you can get a meeting going for less than $100 or $200 a pop. That's a great deal if you work in enterprise. So go try it out, help people out. And if you listen and don't work in sales, you could still join and send pitches to us too. That's cool with us. So thank you so much for being on. We're going to go, make sure you go look in the description for that link. We'll talk to you guys later.